Geek Out! Hey, this is a special episode with friend of the show, Christopher Lee Swartzlander. He's got a follow-up to his earlier novel, Tripping Over Reality, which is Tripping Over Reality, Blaze of Glory, which gets its exclusive launch at the All-Star Comic-Con on June 15th at Tyson's Corner. But you know what? Let's let Chris talk about it.
Someone we have on the show today is a friend of mine who was back on. I think the first thing we ever did together was we did back-to-back Kiss, the Kiss My Podcast episode. We did the music from The Elder and Creatures of the Night, which seems like forever ago because that was a long series we did of every Kiss studio album. And we kind of touched on it a little bit there, but he's got a follow-up to a book he wrote a little while ago that we're going to go in depth and to talk about. It's Mr. Christopher Swartzlander back on the Geek Out Network podcast extraordinaire, Jingle Jangle. Chris, welcome back to the show.
Can you dig it?
Yeah!
What's going on, fellas?
What's up, man?
Oh, you know, same old, listening to better music than music from the Elder.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you've got a new book coming out, the follow-up to Tripping Over Reality 2, Blaze of Glory. So the interesting thing I've noted, you know, the first book was kind of this deconstruction of the wish fulfillment of getting to become your own hero. With this follow-up, Chris, we're seeing kind of like, well, it's almost a deconstruction of like the second generation of superheroes, the ones that are like angry and moody and dark, like the Watchmen era. Basically anyone influenced by Frank Miller and Alan Moore. Was that kind of a deliberate kind of generational jump that you wanted to make with this one?
It really was. The first story is a Bronze Age story on steroids, you know, with a lot of interesting metaphysical insights that, you know, may or may not be intelligent. In the second book, I kind of wanted to do the Bronze Age runs into the modern age anti-hero. We had that big anti-hero movement in the late 80s, early 90s, where everyone ran around with a bunch of guns and pouches, offing bad guys. And I kind of wanted to look at the effects of a decision like that, of murdering a villain, you know, which the old school heroes just would never think of doing, but seemed to be like everyone in the early 90s was all up for killing villains, which really makes for a very big possibility of running out of storylines because you run out of villains when you start killing everybody off.
Yeah, I think like the Punisher has maybe like 2 or 3 recurring villains.
Yeah.
That was some of Moon Knight,
Jigsaw
too.
being one, and the others I can't.
You could argue Barracuda.
Barracuda.
During the Max, yeah.
But yeah, Moon Knight, I remember hearing somewhere back when he first started out, he was just killing dudes left and right, and they were like, yo, he's got to have a rogues gallery, man. But like something,
you're going to run out of ideas.
Something else I love, just touching on the idea, because that's always been a fascinating thing in comics for me, is the morality and the anti-hero and the vigilante and the good guy and the Superman and all that kind of stuff. Is like, are you, like, as a Batman or a Moon Knight type character, are you better off like just beating them to a pulp and making them just a vegetable for the rest of their lives? Because there's that great, I think it's called Silent Night, the Moon Knight like annual or special Christmas issue that I think was Dwayne Straczynski wrote. And I believe it's also his first comic. I think I talked to him about it at a con. But there's a moment where I think it's in this book where Moon Knight beats some guys up so bad and then like leaves, and then like the ambulance EMT guys show up and they're like, they should have just killed him, man. Like, this guy's life is ruined, you know? So yeah, that whole idea is kind of an interesting thing. Where does that come from? Because I mean, obviously this is the second book in a series here. Give the readers a little bit of a background to kind of just how this whole thing started, because I met you, back when I used to work at the comic shop. When we first met, where was this idea at in your head? Because obviously the book hadn't come out yet then, the first one. But where was it kind of at, and how did the whole thing come about in the first place?
Oh, you mean the first novel?
Yeah, the first novel.
Idea for the second?
Yeah.
Well, the first novel, you know, I'll be 50 this year. I started writing the first novel when I turned 43. And I woke up one day and I realized I had less time in front of me than I had behind me, and I kind of wanted to explore what might happen next.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to do that using something I'm extremely familiar with, and that's superheroes in comics. So it was really a cathartic story for me. I found out a lot of things about myself while writing it that I didn't know. And I wanted to, give the possibility of some hope, both to myself and whoever reads the book, that, this might not be all there is. And if you read the book, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's an interesting look at faith and death and rebirth and what might come next, and being given a second chance, which we all kind of want, all through life and even afterwards, I think.
Absolutely.
Was it easy kind of jumping back into the world of American Flag for the follow-up?
Oh, it was so easy. The first book, like I said, it deals with so many crazy themes and you meet a lot of oddball creatures, and you travel to interesting places. And I wanted to set at least one story solidly in the comic world that I had created. So I wanted to write more of a standard superhero tale, which is what the second book is, with some brutal consequences. And it's a great story. I think you'll appreciate it.
Mm.
How early into, like, obviously you said, about a 7-year process of coming up with the idea for book one. How early on did you have that? Was it a pretty organic, idea for book two, like as you're working on book one, or was it something you finished book one, you kind of sit back, you look at that physical copy, you're like, holy shit, I did it, and then you're like, boom, here's book two, I got this idea?
Absolutely. I had 5 books initially planned for the series.
Right on.
And I had 5 separate ideas and for stories that I wanted to tell. So the second book, it had always been planned. It might not necessarily have been wholly thought out when I started writing it, but I did know where I wanted it to start. I did know where I wanted it to end. I have the plot points for the next 3 novels planned out. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do this second book in a more traditional superhero setting is because the next 3 books kind of are insane. They take you back to Bendu, and they take you back through the multiverse, and you'll visit a lot of different ideas that I touched on. And I planted a lot of the seeds for the next 3 books in the first and the second book. So it'll be, the final book will wrap up in a nice tidy package. And I may do a 6th, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
That's awesome, man. That's got to be crazy to be like just creating this like huge world of all these characters. Do you have like a huge like whiteboard in the Swartzlander residence just with everything timelined out there, or is it just kind of like as you go, you kind of?
I really should, but I don't. It's all in my head.
Yeah.
I do record a lot of my notes. I have a linear timeline recorded out. I got really drunk one night, and my wife recorded me ranting for about 3 hours.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
From the beginning of the 3rd book to the end of the 5th book. So I have all those plot points planned out. As far as keeping track of the continuity, it's getting a bit difficult now that there's a second book.
Sure.
And I've introduced so many characters. But I just reference the other books. It slows me down a bit, and maybe I should do some sort of drawn-out character Bible, which I have done for the mainstays of the team, for the comic that's coming out. That way, the artist has an idea of what the characters are. But I do need to expand that to include a lot of other characters, because there are characters in the second book that made just a brief appearance in the first book. That you may not even realize when you read the second book were in the first book, without going back and scanning. And I do a lot of stuff like that. I reference a lot of very small details from the books prior into the new books. And they eventually will bloom out into big plot points in the following books.
Right on. And something else, like you and I, obviously you were on the Kiss podcast for 2 episodes, share a lot of musical similarities and interests in bands and whatnot. Is something like when you're writing or coming up with stuff, are you listening to music, or is that something that plays a big part?
I am. I'm a big fan of Mudvayne when I'm writing, especially Determined. When I'm really tired, I'll throw on Mudvayne's Determined. I don't know if you're familiar with it, and I'll just go to town. I'll throw the headphones on and write. But mostly, I I throw on old TV shows and stuff and just let them drone in the background while I'm writing. Yeah. You know.
With you had mentioned that this book, both novels had kind of come about as you were realizing that you were kind of, I don't want to say nearing the end, but you were past the halfway.
Studying for the final exam.
Sure, yeah, you were past the halfway point. Midterms were over. Yeah. With the main character of these books, Martin, he dies. This isn't a big spoiler because it happens like the beginning of the first book. He dies at the age of 43 before he gets transported into the world of American Flag and all that sort of thing. How much of yourself would you say is reflected in Martin?
Martin is 89% me. But there's a bit of me in every single character, even the villains. And I think all writers do that. I draw from a lot of my friends too. A lot of their personalities are in my characters. For instance, my best friend Jason Goldsberry, who does the technical lay-ins for all my books. I've known him for 17 years, and he is absolutely the Air Assault character that's in that book. My friend Randy, who passed a couple of years ago, is the Tachyon Pulse character. These are guys that I gamed with and chatted with a lot on TeamSpeak, so I knew them. I knew their personalities and how they spoke, and if you read the characters, they ring true. But yeah, I'm definitely in each and every single character. I see bits of myself, and I tap into those parts of me when I write those guys. So, and there's nothing I like writing more than character dialogue back and forth.
Yeah, whenever I write creatively, that's the part where I always have to rein in. It's like you can't have these drawn out dialogue scenes. That's not how these, as do you find that to be the hardest part creatively, like either both getting that personal with your writing and kind of trying to be precious about the page when it comes to writing dialogue?
I'm sorry. Do I find it difficult to write dialogue?
Well, is the most difficult part for you creatively both the amount of personal injection into the narrative?
No, not at all.
Oh, okay.
I leave it all on the page. There are, and when you read through the books, you'll see them. There are parts in there where I just dig so deep into myself that I've sat in front of the keyboard bawling like a baby writing scenes, just to get into. I put myself into the places. There's a scene in the first book, and I'll give this away, where Martin does witness his mother's death and is present for it. And I actually, the entire time I wrote that, I was sitting in front of my mother's hospital bed as she died. My mother's alive. I don't want to. No. Yeah. I don't want to curse her, but I was there when I wrote that scene. So when you read it, it'll feel real to you.
Sure.
You'll feel all the emotion coming out of that scene. And I did that a couple of times in this next book. I've read through the next book, several times. I've had to because I've had to edit it, and there are points in that book where I still cry when I read them, especially some of the character interactions, because they ring true.
With this one,
so I definitely leave everything that I am on those pages. I have no trouble dipping into who I am and using that as my ink. That was a weird thing to say, but yeah.
The ink is your blood, man.
Yeah, like the Kiss comic.
That's right, man.
Yeah.
That's still one of the craziest freaking things, man.
Yeah.
Isn't that nuts?
Yeah. I wonder how much. I wonder how much.
Grinwald in the Squadron Supreme had his ashes put in the remakes or the reprints.
That's so crazy, man. I wonder how much one of those Kiss comics
novel
goes for, like, the ink and the blood kind of deal.
It's probably like Phantom of the Paradise prices.
Yeah, depending on
Not Phantom of the Paradise.
And just as worth it.
Yeah.
Phantom
of the Park. Yeah.
Meets Phantom of the Park. Yeah.
Yeah.
I get my 70s
Phantom of the
Phantoms.
Park. This man won't die. Just a horrible film.
Well, kind of like we were talking about earlier. I mean, like the great kind of pitch of that first book is, this comic fan it dies and wakes up in the body of his favorite superhero. Kind of the obvious question, Chris, is in terms of the characters you grew up reading, who's that superhero you want to wake up as?
Wow, I love so many of them, but I mean the one that is actually me would have to be Ted Kord Blue Beetle. I mean, big fat chubby nerd that had to wear a girdle. Ended up having a heart attack. Because he just he'd rather read than work out and be an in shape superhero.
Mm-hmm.
Just loved him. Just loved the character. And I loved. While I would love to see him come back as Blue Beetle, I do like how DC Comics handled his death. As a true hero.
They've teased both a return during the Rebirth era and him showing up in the Arrowverse on like the CW.
Mm-hmm. And they've had references to him, I think, as early as like
season 2.
I thought, probably season 2. But yeah, points say like what the Kord Industries kind of stuff in the background and whatnot. So
yeah, there's a lot of Ted Kord out there, and he's mentioned a lot, but he's not Blue Beetle,
Yeah.
And I want him to come back as Blue Beetle because I'm old and nostalgic.
Well, at least it's not. At least it's not Dan Garrett.
I'd have to be pretty old, wouldn't I?
That's book 6.
I remember listening to the Blue Beetle on the radio.
Yeah. They interrupted it when they bombed Pearl Harbor. So with this follow up, is it really just kind of if we're talking personal connection to the story and the narrative and all that, is this one kind of a meditation and on how you feel about the late 80s, early 90s anti-hero era? And were you kind of surprised where that story and that reflection took you?
It is a reflection of how I felt about what was going on at that time. Because, I'm an old school comic reader, and I don't believe that comics should kill, or comic heroes should kill unless absolutely necessary. I'm not saying that I don't enjoy the Punisher, because I do, but he doesn't. I was really interested to see where this ended up at the end, and how the story flowed into my final conclusion. But yeah, I definitely had preconceived notions about the entire idea when I wrote the book, and I don't think I changed my mind while writing it. I still prefer my heroes not to kill.
Mm.
So
yeah.
That's just me. Because we tend to lower ourselves, and I think the fact that in the beginning of the book, in the preface, Insidious, who is the Nazi terrorist that is responsible for the creation of Blue Blazes and Blue Blazes' parents' deaths, the fact that he was a Nazi just kind of mirrored what is kind of going on in society now. Do we silence people just because they have different ideas? According to the Constitution, no. But yeah, I have no problem with punching a Nazi in the mouth. But I don't think that we should just go out there and wholeheartedly eradicate people that have different ideas.
Yeah. I mean,
not right away. Not until they start,
Yeah.
You know, they drew first blood. You know, that kind of thing.
Of course. Yeah.
Rambo rules, man. Rambo rules.
It's the old Superman. You know, if we're talking superhero kind of morality lessons, it's the old Superman stance: never punch down. But
exactly.
But don't be afraid to back from a fight if necessary.
Exactly. Yeah. Always stand up for what you believe in, and don't kill unless it means the lives of innocents.
Yeah.
You know.
Here, okay.
Which is why I love. And a lot of people just freaked out about you know, Superman killing in the Man of Steel, but
for some reason I thought that was depicted like I always had a problem in the end of Superman 2 when like Zod, Ursa, and Non are clearly depowered, and he's just like, I'm going to throw you all in holes in my fortress. Bye. like it's
yeah,
kind of
basically we don't know whether he killed them or not.
Yeah. There are deleted scenes where you see them like being escorted out by like Arctic police, but those are deleted scenes.
Yeah,
they should have left those in. I think.
Yeah, as far as the theatrical version and the Dick Donner version, they're fucking dead.
Yeah, Superman's gleeful in their death.
Yeah,
where at least the Man of Steel,
the Donner version too. It's fantastic. It's well done.
Yeah, but at least the Man of Steel, he seems a little bit bummed. You know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he totally like. Screams.
He's like, oh. This is hard being a superhero.
Yeah. This movie.
And meanwhile, Batman's across the fucking pond, just gunning people down. Like, this is easy.
Yeah,
this
like
is easy, son.
The beginning of Batman v Superman, where he just doesn't even blink when he like annihilates people, and
I
there's
love
like
it.
Batwing.
I don't give a shit. I love when his Batmobile. His tire runs over a guy's face as it drives through the warehouse, and he's just like, dun, 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 dun. And he's using a.
Doesn't even slow down.
Yeah, he's using a car as an anchor. I'm like, good. Let him kill them all.
He doesn't even give an oh my. You know.
Yeah. He's like, Alfred, we got to clean the tire. We get home, I got face all over it. And then they just went like super neutered in Justice League, where he's like, I don't touch anybody. You know, I use. Well, you know, he's still using laser guns. The problem that's a whole other thing though. But like,
it's also Bugmen.
It is Bugmen, but like the thing that it's funny is like all these movies and Batman v Superman as well proves that if you're going for the quote, and I mean like this is the biggest air quotes, quote unquote realistic like live action superhero stuff, Batman can't do shit. Because like during the Doomsday fight, he's hiding behind a rock. He's like, "Please God, please God, please!" Like he's like half a mile away with his kryptonite grenade launcher, and he's like, "I can shoot him with it. After that, I'm useless. My Batwing's broken." You know, and Wonder Woman and
out from behind the rock. Is it over?
Yeah, well, there's that great moment where he's about like, you know, Doomsday's about to, you know, blow his sonic load or whatever he does, and then like Superman and Wonder Woman just like put their hands up like, this is kind of a little bit annoying, and Batman is like literally going fuck, and like jumps behind a rock because he'd be dead.
He's holy shit.
Yeah, and then we don't hear from him for like 5 minutes later because he couldn't do anything, and that's kind of what happens in Justice League, where he just like has his little ledge he sits on, shoots until his gun runs out, and then Superman shows up, and there's that great look where he's like, thank God. Oh man. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, those movies have their faults and their foibles,
sure.
and they're definitely glaring. You know, the mustache being one of them. The biggest issue I had was Batfleck branding villains.
Oh yeah, and they're like,
I'm like, come on, yeah, he's bitter and all, but come on.
Yeah. That's the mark of death in the prison.
Yeah,
I don't know why that would be
killing them. Is what
yeah.
What is it? Why is that the mark of death?
Because they needed some plot point.
Wouldn't it be like a badge of honor? Like, yo, it was Batman.
Yeah, and they'd be like, you know, maybe it's the fact that you're a criminal scumbag that you get killed in prison, not that you got caught by Batman, because everybody got caught by Batman.
Yeah, everyone got caught by Batman. Wouldn't all the criminals in prison be dead?
Yeah.
I'm assuming those are like the hardest dudes too, so they're just like they form their own like Bat gang, like the Bat Boys, just like
yeah.
The Bat 1%ers.
Yeah. But there's so many.
Yeah.
There's.
So you had mentioned you had shaped this as a 5-novel series initially. Can we expect like different tropes or time periods within?
Yes, absolutely different ideas. And each, while while American Flag is Martin, the character that Martin falls into is American Flag. Your typical archetype hero or archetype. While he is prominent in the second book, it is actually Blue Blaze's story. The first story being American Flag's origin. The first book being so each book will deal with one of the mainstay members of Freedom Command. The next book is Air Assault and Cachet's book. They're very typical, superhero couple. One's super liberal, one's super conservative, but they somehow make it work. And the fourth book will be Tachyon Pulse's book, and the final book will be Primordial's book. And each of them will deal with a different aspect of the superhero genre. So I think you'll like that. And the final book being Primordials, who is my favorite character, the immortal illegitimate son of King Gilgamesh. His story, I think, is going to be the funnest to tell, especially in terms of, he's my Superman archetype, my Thor, immortal character that has lived since ancient Sumerian times, and it's going to be a really nice culmination of all these storylines. They're all leading to this eventual final book, and all the other heroes will be in the other books. But the main focus will be on those particular heroes. So
okay, it's kind of like this grand tapestry. It's almost like you, especially with the iconography, both in the heroes and villains, you've kind of crafted this almost like an homage to the. The obvious connection would be the Justice League, but I would go as far to say it's actually the Justice Society.
Yes, absolutely. They're my favorite team.
You nail on the head, man.
He's like, yep, 100%. And just like every other writer, a lot of the tropes are borrowed and tried and true. But I put my own spin on a lot of things, and I think I'll surprise you with a lot of the results of how I cook my goulash as how other people cook theirs.
We're getting Hungarian in here. Okay.
Now I'm hungry.
Who is your favorite member of the JSA?
Oh my God. All of them. Alan Scott, I love. I like Michael Holt, Mr. Terrific. The new Mr. Terrific, not the old dead one. I just love the old. I love the old All-Star Squadron. I love the Justice Society. I love stories set in World War II. Mm-hmm. I don't know why. I always have. So I've always really appreciated those characters. And I loved what Johns did with the Legacy characters.
Oh, yeah.
When he carried that on.
Yeah, that was great.
When he took over from Robinson and who else was writing it at the time?
Goyer.
I think they had two. What's that?
It was David S. Goyer was one of the co-writers.
Yeah. Yep. And when Johns took over, he just did an amazing. He's just got such a head for all the characters that he writes, and he respects the past of these characters a lot, like Busiek when he did the Avengers. Mm-hmm. He remembers the past and will take an old, crappy, tired character and revitalize them. And I think that's what makes a good comic book writer. Remember the past.
Yeah, kind of like forge a new path, but while remembering what made you fall in love with these characters in the first place.
Exactly. Don't make these hollow shells that I see so often now that are just created for the sake of creating something different. It should develop organically.
Yeah, not like the New 52, where it's all like everyone's young and sexy now, and they all wear armor.
Yeah, look at my collar.
Yeah.
What the hell? And that whole the Earth 2 that was awful.
Yeah. Sorry, James.
So insulted. I'm like, bring back the JSA. Well, how do your flagship team, the first superhero team that ever existed, how do you not have them in a book?
We had James Robinson on the show like a year and a half ago or so, and he was like, they gave him Earth 2, for New 52, and he was like, okay, so are these like the World War II characters? And like basically DC editorials like, no, it's New 52. Everyone's young and sexy and like kill off like the DC Trinity in your book as soon as the book starts. And he was like, fine. And that's why he only like wrote for like 8 issues, and then he was like, I'm done. Peace.
That
like,
poor guy.
Yeah.
Talk about being caught between a rock and a hard place.
Oh yeah. I'm glad he's
that
back.
That would be
there.
like people telling me, all right, I want you to take your characters that you've worked so many years on and totally change them.
Yeah.
But I like how they are. Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
Throw it all out. Just none of it. One of my dream like pitches for DC would be to do a mini series that teams up the JSA with the Freedom Fighters. I think that would be the best thing in the world.
Oh, that'd be so good. I love the Freedom Fighters. I love Uncle Sam.
Oh yeah, no, I love Uncle Me, but like you get him with like Phantom Lady and like the Human Bomb and stuff.
Human Bomb, Dog Man. Yeah. That would be great.
Oh man, get at me, Jeff Johns.
That would be really great. And I'd love to see a crossover where they take where Marvel and DC team up, and they take the old school All-Star Squadron and team them up with the Invaders for the All Winter Squad.
Oh yeah. Oh god.
That would be really cool.
One day, Spirit of 76.
Oh yeah.
So, Chris, you've got this book coming out on the 15th. It's debuting at Ace Comic-Con here in Northern Virginia, up in Tyson's Corner. How did that all kind of come about?
Oh, the launch. I was at the NovaCon, which is what the All-Star Con was before it became the All-Star Con. And I was there selling the first book, and I was halfway through the second novel. And I don't like giving myself timelines, but when I was there, Kevin Bednarz asked me if I'd like to do the launch at the All-Star Con, which I agreed to. Of course, I was thrilled because I just love Kevin. He's a good guy, and he's always been there for me and believed in me. So then I had to light a fire up under myself to finish this next novel, but it's totally worth it. It's an incredible novel. I've grown leaps and bounds from my freshman attempt to my sophomore attempt, and I imagine that my next novel will be even better. I've found my voice in my writing and my pacing, and I'm rather excited about getting it out to the public. I've had a couple of my fans who have really stuck with me that I've given advanced copies of the book to, and they've read it, and they just love it. So I'm real happy with the feedback that I've been getting off the second novel.
I know this is like asking a marathon runner right after he finishes a marathon if he wants to run another marathon, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Now that, with...
Do you want to run another marathon?
Yeah, let's all run marathons. But let's all do that 21 however miles, but
I'd just be dead. I'd just die on
like 1 mile. Just
not even a half a mile, and I'm just going to walk the rest of this.
Just hold the side.
Yeah. Like wheezing.
I'm not running unless something's chasing me.
Yeah. And even then,
I'd be like, just kill it. It'd eat me.
Yeah.
End this misery.
But do you have a tentative start date or end date for the third installment of the Tripping Over Reality series?
I plan on starting it at least sometime within the next 6 months. But my next novel is going to be a horror novel. I've always wanted to work in that genre, so I'm going to start that here within the next week. I've had something that's been itching at the back of my mind since I moved here to the mountains of Tennessee, and I really have to get that book on paper. And this isn't going to be a self-published work. I'm going to shop this one to a publisher, but I will definitely have a Tripping Over Reality 3, 4, and 5. But I couldn't give you a timeline at this point. it'll be done, and that'll always be self-published. Those are my characters, my creations, and I don't want anyone else having a say in what I do with them. So,
with we've had horror on the brain. I would say lately, but really like
Since the beginning.
yeah, forever.
Yeah, of time.
Yeah. The epoch, what are some of your horror influences?
oh my God, John Carpenter. My name is Christopher Lee. My mother named me after the actor Christopher Lee. She was a Hammer horror fan. I've watched horror films from the time I could walk. I remember being, and this is a very vague memory, 3 and 4 years old. My mother would wake me up in the middle of the night because she'd be watching a horror film on television. Back when we only had 3 channels, and she would make me get up and watch the horror movie with her because she was like I was going to protect her, at 3, and then she'd put me back to bed. Scared to death, but I've always been a huge horror movie fan. I love the old Universal pictures. I love the Hammer films. I love it all. I love Rob Zombie's work. I know he gets a lot of crap, but I like his work just because he's so odd.
Yeah.
And all of his work has that really cool, dirty, grimy 70s feel to it.
Yeah.
Which I dig because I grew up watching horror films in the 70s. I remember going to the movie theaters with my dad seeing The Omen.
Nice.
That's how good my parents were. And that movie just scared the heck out of me. But I've always been a horror fan, and my influences are many. I think that any true horror fan is going to tell you that. They just love the genre.
Did you see the original Halloween in theaters?
I did not. At the time that came out, my mother had remarried.
Oh.
And my stepdad wasn't about to let me go see that film.
Wow.
I would have, though. I would have. I really was chomping at the bit to go see it, but I wasn't allowed. That was, and I remember, speaking of films around that time period, I remember when Conan hit the theaters, and I begged to go see that film, and my parents just wouldn't let me. It's rated R. No. Oh, come on.
That was my parents' first date. I exist.
Oh, really? That's really cool.
Yeah, I exist because of that movie. In a weird way.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, if I ever met Schwarzenegger, just feel
That
like
is really cool.
that would be my that's my in.
You just lean up close to him and be like, "You made me."
He's like, not again.
It's like I don't see the gap tooth.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, man. But I have to ask then, as somebody that similarly grew up on the Universal Monster Mash, who is your favorite Universal monster?
I love the Frankenstein monster. I just do. Frankenstein's monster is just incredible. I mean, even for that time period, it was so different. And watching that and The Bride of Frankenstein, I think anything after that, like Ghost of Frankenstein, anything like that's pretty bad. But
Son of Frankenstein, House of Frankenstein,
Son of Frankenstein, yeah, Big Toe of Frankenstein,
yeah, Big Trouble in Little Frankenstein,
Frankenstein's mini-me. But yeah, those I love those Frankenstein. Now that's not to say that I don't love the other films. I do. I love The Invisible Man. I'm a huge fan of, all the way into The Fly, and speaking of that, Jeff Goldblum's The Fly was just phenomenal and holds up to this day. I love all the Universal characters, but Frankenstein's monster being my favorite. Yours?
I grew up in a Wolfman house.
Love the Wolfman.
Wolfman running around. Sam, did you take the Wolfman out?
Sam was raised Wolfman.
You were surrounded by them.
Yeah.
Sam, did you feed the Wolfman?
Confirmed Wolfman.
Yeah. Lon Chaney Jr., yeah, here he is.
Yeah, it's the Wolfman. Sam, can we see the Wolfman? Yeah, he's in the basement playing Sega. Oh, my goodness. Oh, man.
I was
good.
always
Yeah, I love the Wolfman. Who doesn't?
I was always a Frankenstein kid.
There you go.
That movie was always my favorite out of all of those. With Dracula, of course, being a close second because it's hard to not love vampires.
Oh yeah, and it's hard not to love Lugosi.
Yeah.
As a vampire. Right?
It's kind of a
He
shame
just had that creepiness that he added to it.
Yeah, Hungarian man,
Yeah.
Hungarian. That's the effect.
You hear me?
It's kind of a shame that he was only Dracula twice.
I know.
And the second time was running around with Abbott and Costello. But that's a phenomenal movie, though. I love Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
Although, arguably, he was also Dracula in Plan 9 from Outer Space.
Yes, he was.
Sometimes,
Yes, he
when he
was.
was actually in the movie. And not the dude with the cape.
Yes. The chiropractor, if Ed Wood is to be believed.
Yeah. So, Chris, something we ask everybody that comes on our fine program, what are you currently geeking out over?
What am I currently geeking out over? My goodness,
that
I
is
have
our
been so
trademark.
busy. I'm really loving Doomsday Clock.
Oh, yeah. I just picked up the new issue, which I have not read yet.
Yeah, same.
I haven't gotten it. It just came out, didn't it?
Yeah.
I'm really upset with the time frame of that book. What's it come out every 4 months?
It was originally monthly, then it was every other month, and then it's whenever Gary Frank's done.
That's insane. I mean, come on, Gary Frank. You're killing me.
One more Gary Frank, more like 7 more issues.
Yeah.
Gary Frank.
It's gonna be a long time.
That's how I
it
didn't get the JSA Freedom Fighters book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's insane. I can't believe that it's taking so long between issues. Now, the results of that time are phenomenal, and the story is excellent. So I'm really appreciating it. I'm a big Watchmen fan. I always have been.
Oh yeah.
Who isn't? That is a DC Comics fan. Not that I don't love Marvel. I do. I have a love for them as well. But I think as I got older, I wanted my heroes to be a little more serious, which DC tends to do a little better. I think their movies are a little too dark. But good stuff. Good stuff. Doomsday Clock is good.
I mean, I guess their movies would be the old adage, be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it.
Yeah. The monkey's paw. Yeah. So.
But yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I mean, no, continue. I was just going to, probably grandstand knowing my ass, but yeah, what's up?
Grandstand, go ahead.
Oh, I mean, shoot. I was going to say, anything outside of comics because, I know you've seen Infinity War recently.
Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I really liked it. I'm enjoying, they've done a good job with the storytelling on the Marvel films.
Yeah.
I love how they all link, and I loved, this is the culmination of everything that we've watched for the last, 10 years?
Yeah.
And it was really well executed. I loved it.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing how it wasn't a complete mess.
Yeah, if you think about it, there's 18 movies leading up to it. You kind of have to pay off, in some way, shape, or form on 6 or 18 movies worth of 6 distinct MacGuffins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that it does really well is that it doesn't hold your hand. It's one of those movies where it's look, we're 10 years in. We're not going to explain all these characters. You know what I mean?
You're very light on
had-
exposition, which I love.
You had 10 years to watch 18 movies.
Yeah. Imagine the kind of nightmare that would be if this was the first one you saw.
Yeah.
And you're like, why is there a tree? And why is he a teenager?
Imagine.
Why is he calling that raccoon a bunny?
They'd have to do. It'd be insane.
Yeah.
There is a very brief scene where Doctor Strange explains it all to Tony Stark. And then they're just off to the races, and it's oh, okay.
Yeah, they're you got it? Good. Okay, here we go.
Cool. So let's joke about Ben and Jerry's. Sweet. All right. Fantastic.
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, I thought it was really handled well. I'm really not happy about a lot of the dangling plot points they've left at the end of some of these films. I want to see Adam Warlock.
Yeah. Same.
Adam Warlock is Thanos' ultimate nemesis. He needs to be in these films. Don't hint at him in 2 movies in 2 different places, which was weird.
Yeah.
and then just not bring him up at all.
Yeah, I don't know what they're waiting for.
Guardians 3, I guess.
I mean, we finally got a payoff to what happened to Red Skull, so
Yeah.
I was really happy for that.
That only took like 7
was
years.
Yeah.
I was so happy, and I imagine he made bank for that little scene.
Well, it wasn't Hugo Weaving.
Oh, it wasn't?
No.
No, he's not interested in that anymore.
Yeah, like when he was doing press for the first Captain America, he's like, "Yeah, I'm contracted, but I'm not coming back." And so they got.
Oh, really? Wow.
He hated the makeup.
Yeah, they got Ross Marquand from The Walking Dead to basically do a Hugo Weaving Red Skull impression.
Did a great job.
He did a fine job. Yeah, he was amazing. And speaking of Walking Dead, Rick's not coming back.
They're phasing him out.
Yeah.
I wrote the CBR article about that.
Yeah, it just
that
got
show is over.
It just got officially announced this morning or
Really?
yesterday.
They're phasing him out, huh?
He's filming like a handful of episodes
I think
for
it's
season
6.
something like that.
Yeah.
6 of them. Yep.
And
shit.
Norman Reedus just got
Huge
So-
deal.
$20 million to be the new lead.
What the fuck? Oh
Yeah.
my
and
goodness.
Lori, what's her name? Lori Cohen.
Lauren Cohen's out after this season too because she's got Whiskey Cavalier over at ABC, so
damn.
she's doing
I'll
6
be darned.
episodes. Yeah.
But yeah.
Holy moly.
Rick, Andrew, whatever.
Lincoln.
Yeah, Andrew Lincoln.
Andrew Lincoln. Yeah.
Decided he wants to focus on movies.
When I say a president's names, I have to.
That's crazy. I didn't know that. Wow.
I don't think that's a great idea for him.
I think that might. I mean, it certainly will instill a new sense of energy into. They've got a new showrunner going into season 9 too.
Yeah.
So because the season 8 finale, second worst ratings in the show history.
And it wasn't that good. I mean, that
Rightfully
show
so.
it's kind of been going down the hill. I mean, I've been reading The Walking Dead since it came out. The comic is to the point where it needs to end.
Do you have not to send collector fanboys to raid your domicile, but do you have Walking Dead #1?
There are things I have in my house that you'll never hear about.
Okay.
So, yes. Also, Adam Warlock's egg.
I have a beautiful copy of Hulk 181 as well.
Oh,
Nice.
I'm trying to think what the crown jewel in my comic collection is.
Oh boy.
I have Watchmen #1. That's pretty
Yeah.
sweet.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I
got the OG 4-issue Claremont Miller Wolverine
Oh yeah.
run.
Oh, I have that too. It's excellent.
Yeah.
I have issues 2, 3, and 4 of The Dark Knight Returns.
Nice.
Good stuff. What happened to issue 1?
Mom didn't get it for me back when I was a kid.
Come on, Mom.
Mom, no.
No, my dad. It was a really sweet thing. He's a born again comic book fan, and he's really into first editions of novels and books and stuff like that. And so when it was my birthday a couple years ago, he was getting in the comic books, and for my birthday he was every fan should own a first edition of their favorite book, and he bought me the 4 Dark Knight Returns issues, the first printings,
Oh, that's
which
awesome.
is pretty cool.
I think in terms of
That is sweet.
Yeah,
in terms of Batman, I have all but 1 issue of Year 1.
I got
And
all those.
I've got all 13 of the Long Halloween.
Nice.
Oh, I do have
Such a good story.
I do have the first 5 or 6 issues of Man of Steel after Infinite Crisis on Infinite Earths, where they kind of rebooted and retold the storyline.
John Byrne stuff.
Yeah.
John Byrne run?
Yeah.
Oh, so good.
I got all 6 of those.
I think they're the
Yeah.
first printings too.
Yeah.
Those are beautiful.
Yeah.
I love
I've
those
got,
covers.
and I managed to pick up since I moved here. And what's really neat is being here in Tennessee is that a lot of the comics that I find are a third of what I would pay up in Virginia.
Ooh.
I'm going to Heroes Con next month, which is the same weekend that you'll be up here for
Yeah.
Ace. I'm looking forward to those Carolina backbends.
Oh, dude. I picked up a bunch of Golden Age books, Golden Age horror,
The EC stuff?
Multiple, yeah, a bunch of EC stuff, and a bunch of off-brand stuff. A couple of them that are in that are mentioned in the congressional hearings against comic book violence in the 50s and in Seduction of the Innocent.
Wortham, yeah.
And I got them for basically nothing, so
Damn.
I was very happy about that.
I
have a copy of Seduction of the Innocent. My wife bought me a copy of that book, a first edition.
Nice. Chris, you'll get a kick out of this. One of my prized possessions, which is worth nothing, is something I got at the back bins of the old comic shop we used to frequent and I worked at, is the first issue of Marvel Comics RoboCop, which is like
awesome.
Yeah, which I think I paid like basically cover price for, but
that's awesome.
It's classic. So
something that's equally worth nothing, but big to my heart is I have a comic book adaptation of Army of Darkness.
Nice.
Like not just the ongoing series that took place after the movie, but like literally the movie in like 3 parts or in 3 books.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
That's like my useless Marvel Treasure editions of Star Wars.
Oh, yeah.
I would love those. Those are
the 1 and 2, and they're not valuable at all. But my father bought them for me when I was a kid. So I mean they're near and dear to my heart, and they are ragged.
Like some shit. Yeah. No, I've got the first issue of Marvel's The Further Adventures. That's what it's called. The Further Adventures of Indiana Jones.
Oh.
I remember that. Yeah.
So
I remember when that book came out.
Yeah. It's like this is other things that he does.
This is when his adventures
They show
don't
him
involve.
shaving,
Yeah. Setting his alarm clock in the morning.
Yeah.
He's like,
sitting on the toilet with a newspaper.
Yeah. He's just bickering with Marianne. There's no Nazis involved at all.
Yeah. She's complaining about something he bought at this, but she asked for Diet Coke.
Yeah. Marion, this is the 30s. We don't have diet yet.
Should open your eyes when they open the Ark.
So,
Oh goodness,
Chris,
that's good stuff.
Chris, before we turn you back to the wilds of Tennessee, is there anything else that you'd like to plug?
I did want to let you guys know, and I may have touched on this earlier. Advent Comics, who carries my book in their creator-owned line, Unbound Realms. They carry both my books. I've signed a contract with them, pardon me, and finished the script and gotten it to them for the comic adaptation of the first novel. So the first issue is written and waiting for art, and I'll be starting on that on the second issue soon. It'll be a 4-issue mini with a 5th issue Secret Origins book. So that'll be something for you to look forward to. Aaron Mead's doing the art. I'm doing the colors. And I'm really excited about it. I mean, ultimately, this is the genre I wanted the book to be in. And I'm really happy that it's moving forward.
Nice.
So,
that's exciting,
there
man.
is that.
Any idea when the first issue is going to come out?
I don't know. Aaron is an incredible artist, but he's very meticulous. So I might run into the doomsday clock thing where I'm waiting for the artist, but it's so worth it. I love his work. He's very has that very 80s Perez feel.
Mm-hmm. I do,
and that is kind of where my comics are, in terms of Bronze Age feel.
Yeah.
And I'm just really excited. I'm hoping that I'll start seeing the art trickle in here soon, so that I can start coloring it. Save a lot of money him doing the art and me doing the coloring. But
sure. I
actually worked into the contract that I get at least 1 issue of each book for my personal collection.
Nice.
So that I gotta have one,
Of course.
But I don't really have a timeline. Much like everything else I do, I don't have a timeline. I suffer from imagitis.
Knowing a couple image creators, I totally understand.
But I won't do what they do. I won't promise you a book at a certain time, and then it doesn't happen.
Some of them, like I remember, like Crosswind was announced a year or 2 before issue 1 came out, and I know that there had been some delays with like sex criminals. That was which was a shame because that's one of my favorite books that Image does. And I know there were some delays on the most recent issue of like Southern Bastards by like 3 months.
Yeah. Well, I was referencing early Image. I mean, I don't know what's going on currently in Image.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But I'm talking about like in the '90s. You know, when they did that crossover with wasn't it Valiant?
Yes.
It was the Image Valiant crossover where they had that, was it Deathmate?
Yeah, and they but I mean you're looking at artists that are very, I mean, Jim Lee is known for taking his time, Silvestri is known for taking his time.
Oh yeah.
But yeah. All right, man.
Phenomenal artist. Oh, did you read the Silvestri Wade book? Was it Wade? What was it? Oh, Hunter Killer?
I have not.
Oh, it's excellent. It's very good.
I'll have to give it a shot. But yeah, so Chris, you know, again, you'll be at Ace Comic Con on.
No, it's All Star Comic Con.
All Star Comic. Why don't I keep
the
saying
All Star Comic Con? Yes, sir.
Yeah, All Star Comic Con up in Tyson's Corner on June 15th. Of course, you can get the first volume of Tripping Over Reality out on like Google Books and that thing that Apple has that's not Google Books because that's proprietary, but iBooks.
You can get my books on Amazon. You can get them in a lot of the local shops. I know Comic Logic carries it up there. There are 3 different shops here in Tennessee that carry it. You can get it through Advent. You can go to the Advent site and pick up their books. Pick up my books off their site, or you can, you know, just send me an email. And I'll throw you a book, you know, not for free, of course, but you know, yeah, I got to make a little bit of money.
That's right.
But yeah, you know, and I'm trying to get it so it's available anywhere, and at this point, it pretty much is. So.
Very cool, man.
Thank you for plugging me. I appreciate it, and thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, no it's always a pleasure talking to you, and we'll try to figure out some. I mean, it sounds like you have a bunch of stuff in the works to get you on here again and talk about it.
Maybe we could do the horror book in time for Halloween.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And then we can go full on
horror.
Yeah.
Oh goodness, yeah. I'd love to get on. You know, you need to do a horror run. Have you guys done one? I mean, a recent, like an old Universal horror.
I mean, Chris does
series?
has done 2 different podcast series that are horror centric. He did one focused entirely on Friday the 13th, and he's doing one focused entirely on Nightmare on Elm Street right now.
Oh, I love Nightmare on Elm
Street. Which is getting the Image treatment.
Yeah. To be fair, all the specialty shows these days.
Yeah, we're taking a.
We
bit
took
of
a
break.
month. We took a month and a half.
Yeah. It's fine. We were our own bosses.
Goodness.
Yeah.
I just love Robert Englund. He was just so
good,
fun,
the best,
you know?
Simply the best.
Well, all right, Chris. Again, you're doing the Lord's work, man. It's crazy to think that back when I met you, you were just a comic fan, and now you're creating your own damn world, man. That's nuts.
It's fun, and I appreciate your support. You guys, you know, thank you.
Yeah,
I can't express how much I'm grateful to you guys. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Anytime, man.
This has been another Geek Out production. If you enjoyed what you heard, hey, you know, we've got a special episode every Friday. Of course, there's the usual catching up show every Wednesday, and you get book club episodes just about every Tuesday these days. Thanks for listening.